Hi there. Welcome back to Beyond the Spot, Decolonizing Healing One Brain at a Time. I am your host, Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, licensed professional counselor, healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Today's episode is deeply human and personal for me. We're exploring addiction, not as pathology, but as a nervous system survival strategy. This isn't about shame or moral failure. It's actually about the body's attempt to cope in the absence of safety, belonging, and connection. An addiction, according to my perspective and so many others, is a trauma response. It is an attempt for secure attachment. I want to welcome you to this episode 21, Substance Use and Addiction as Coping. Addiction reframed as survival. Criminalization of BIPOC communities, somatic approaches. That is what we are having the conversation around today. So buckle up and thank you for being here. And with that being said, I do want to give a reflective invitation. When life becomes too much, what do you reach for? What helps your nervous system feel just a little more regulated, even if only for a moment? Is it a person, a pattern, a substance, or a story? I want to invite you to be curious around that as we journey together in this episode of Beyond the Spot. And it's only fair if I were to put it all on the table as I always do. So many of you familiar with me are absolutely familiar with my story. I found it to be a pleasure and my honor to have this conversation this week. Substance use, abuse, addiction, it's very, it's dear, it's personal. It's personal because my sister has been sober, clean, call it whatever you want to call it, but she has not used drugs in almost 30 years. And the way she even got to Georgia, because we're from Charleston, South Carolina, is my mom brought her to me when I was about 23 years old or so, maybe 24. 25 would be pushing it. I'm actually 20, no, I'm 55 now. But I was in my young 20s, married for the first time, and I was mortified when my mom said that she was bringing my sister to Georgia to be with me to save her life. That's not what I wanted to hear, and it was not anything that I was happy about. But I gotta say this, actually and literally dedicate this episode to my mom and to my sister. I don't know two more worthwhile human beings. In fact, my mom and my sister are two of the strongest women I have ever met in my entire life. And I'm so grateful to them because my sister was like my little mama. There's 10 years in between us. And she has stood in the steed for my mom. I'm literally the seventh child. And as I was creating and, just pulling together what I wanted to say in this week's episode, like as a kid, I can't remember a time when my sister and my mom weren't there. In fact, my sister had the responsibility for me and my mom's kids. I'm the seventh child. Do the math. My mom started having babies at 14 years old. The child before me, the baby was born asleep. So as I have developed and, I was a part of my sister's journey, and I'm so grateful that I could be there for her in that way because, quite frankly, I could never repay my sister for all the contributions that she has made to my life. And fact is, her being parentified, I absolutely suspect that that had something to do with her substance abuse and addiction. And so, with that, I am just grateful that it's been at least 25 years, closer to 30 years, since my sister has been drug free. And I'm excited to bring this episode to you. You will find that the things I talk about and the way I speak about them, um, it's meaningful for me. And so I take this responsibility as unburdening. It's no burden for me to show up every week to do this. So thank you for being here. And I hope there's something that comes across that is usable to you, whether it be you are a person addicted to, whether it be sex, drugs, gambling, food, whatever that looks like for you, because it all hits the same part of the brain. I'm just saying. Or if you are a clinician, I hope this gives you some small insight into people that you may sit with. If you're a parent, this is for you as well. So thank you for being here and welcome back to Beyond the Spot. Beyond the Spot, Decolonizing Healing One Brain at a Time, is a podcast that weaves my first love, of course, Brainspotting, and somatic informed modalities with embodied healing, cultural consciousness, and real talk about trauma, resilience, and recovery. Hosted by Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, a licensed professional counselor, spiritual healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Each episode dares to dismantle mental health myths, uplift lived experiences, and restore collective wisdom. One conversation at a time. Beyond the Spot podcast is for educational purposes and is not therapy. Please reach out to licensed medical and mental health professionals. Thank you. Well, this is deeply personal for me, and I can feel my emotions even right now stirring. But I want to invite you to journey with me around addiction as coping, because addiction at its core is regulation. It's the nervous system saying, I can't hold this much pain alone. The body reaches for something to soothe, to numb, to survive. Substance use is not about weakness. Let's dispel that erroneous notion right here and now. It's about wiring. When trauma overwhelms the body's capacity to regulate, we reach for something, anything that helps us feel stable, soothed, or alive. And I gotta tell you, the wiring in the brain and the way it works when we talk about our neurons firing together and wiring together, let's be clear. That's how we learned good things and bad things. It's the same process. So when I talk about addictions as coping, doesn't matter if it's alcohol, if it's cocaine, whatever it is, if it's food, if it's sex, is it gambling? Let's be clear. Addiction is not about the substance. It's about what the substance replaces. It's the search for relief in a system that teaches suppression. It's the body's rebellion against disconnection, y'all. And I want to talk about the 4 C's because they are important to mention here. So I will share the 4 C's in a brain spotting frame because that's what I know. And I trust what I know, as should you. Baseline is a good view to hold as you increase your awareness, experience, and knowledge. That's applicable anywhere. And so the 4 C's, as it relates to addictions work, it's nomenclature. Okay, as we work around addictions and consider addictions. And when I talk about the 4 C's, I'm coming from the place of craving, control, compulsion, and consequences. Now, when I bring it in a brain spotting frame, the idea here is the craving. So, brain spotting in and of itself is such a benefit because, by the nature and inherent design of brain spotting, as we know it to be a power tool when it comes to healing trauma, brain spotting has a way and it reduces the cravings by processing the triggers and emotional pain. When it comes to the C of control, brain spotting is an awesome tool and it enhances the self-awareness and prefrontal cortex functioning, improving impulse control. Now let's look at the C of compulsion. With brain spotting and I'm sure, with somatic experiencing and other somatic bottom up modalities, it addresses the underlying trauma and creates healthier neural pathways to reduce the compulsive behavior. And then there is the 4th C, known as consequences. And so with brain spotting, we're able to support processing the guilt and shame and those processes of how they work in the brain. Okay. Increasing insight and motivation to change despite the negative consequences. So with that, I do want to give a reflective invitation here. Yeah, I'm getting a little tongue-tied because I'm actually journeying back to my sister's days of active addiction. In fact, I was determined to do my internship when I was in school to be a licensed professional counselor. It was an absolute gift and honor that I was able to do my internship at the Atlanta Union Mission um, personal development program, which was actually for women addicted to drugs, and many of them had children. So I literally did my internship at my sister's house, which is a subsidiary of the Atlanta Union Mission. And this has been so many years ago. And I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to Dr. Jill Mays. And I want to say thank you even right here, right now, because they were they were a blessing on my sister's journey to sobriety. And I found it not robbery to give my time there. Yeah, yeah. When we bring what we have, there's always enough for community. And that program really was a saving grace to my sister. And it is a deep seated part of my development. I can't say enough. So, Dr. Jill Mays, thank you. Um, I am forever at your service. And every now and again, Jill will reach out and say, hey, I got this thing going on. I want you to attend, or hey, whatever it is, it's done. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the historical context when we start talking about substance abuse, addictions, and even the criminalization of BIPOC survival. When I speak about BIPOC survival here, look, I identify as an unapologetic American Black woman, and part of my voice as it pertains to marginalized communities, it's with intentionality. And I'm very clear why. As a clinician, as a mahogany skinned woman, I've had curiosities my whole life about what's happening in my community, what's happening in all the communities, actually, because I'm not limited to any one community. But I don't find it often that people are talking about or sharing resources for communities of color. And I have had privilege my entire life. Okay. And there is a context. And depending on where you are located in society, determines your resources. Facts. You can even tell which community you are in socioeconomically and otherwise by looking at the produce in the grocery stores. You can go to some communities and all you see are liquor stores and churches and Family Dollars. And then you can go in other communities and there is a vast difference. To understand addiction, we must understand history. Addiction does not exist in isolation. It absolutely exists in context. One of the leading contextualizations is colonization, y'all. Alcohol was weaponized and introduced to indigenous communities to fracture connection and cultural sovereignty. Not only was alcohol weaponized against indigenous community that many of us reference as Native American communities, also within the Black communities. because it was introduced as currency and control, deepening trauma across generations. And if you think I'm remiss or I don't understand, not sure about the company you keep, but if you have any connection or any relationship with any Native American identifying person, have the conversation. Yeah, because the quote unquote so called reparations received by that community oftentimes show up more as a curse than a blessing. I'm just saying, I just happen to be someone in relationship with the world. And let's even look at this history of chattel slavery. Substances became both control and escape in a system designed to exhaust and dehumanize. And if you think I'm making that up, all you got to do is take a look at whatever's left of our Constitution. It's written. Yeah, much of my history, there's been attempts to erase it. But for those of us that know, we know. And then let's look at this war on drugs. Targeted Black and Brown survival behaviors, criminalizing coping instead of resourcing healing, criminalized poverty and racialized survival. Families were broken apart, and it still continues to happen. Trauma became intergenerational. And yeah, let's talk about medical racism. There's studies about this where marginalized persons, Black more specific, we don't have the same access to even pain pills. When Black and Brown people get to asking for pain pills, it wasn't uncommon for that to be thought of as med seeking. Yeah, that's right. Systems punished Black and Brown pain while prescribing opiates to dominant cultured white suffering people, creating parallel epidemics of addiction and incarceration. And let's look at economic oppression, low wage labor, job loss, and social exclusion kept stress chronic and access to healing scarce. Yeah, mass incarceration, it's real. Countless families torn apart. Generations traumatized. Recovery replaced by punishment. Yeah, there has always been a difference. Yes, even maladaptive, harmful behaviors such as addiction has been racialized. There are different treatment for different people, and oftentimes it has been based on race. In white bodies, it's treated as an illness, as a disease. In Black and Brown bodies, it's treated as a crime. Yeah, it's real. But beneath it all, regardless to how you identify, the same nervous system is crying out for safety. I don't care if you're white, Black, Latin, Native American, West Indian, or Indian. Listen, I'm talking to humanity here. And for me, I literally take my time and prepare every week for this podcast because I don't take it lightly that there are seekers listening to this, there are clinicians listening to this, there are parents listening to this, and I have a responsibility. Perhaps something that comes across would even give my colleagues who are clinicians deeper insight into different than them when they're working with these various populations. Yeah, so I'm intentional and unapologetic. How have we as a society punished people for seeking regulation instead of helping them find it? What if, what if we stopped asking what's wrong with you and started asking what happened to you? What happened to your sense of safety? Because here's the reality: the body's intelligence, it's a real thing. We know that the brain is genius. And yeah, there is a reason I am a brain, body wise mental health clinician. There's something about somatic and brain spotting approaches. Addiction lives in the body, so healing must too. Somatic and brain spotting approaches help clients locate the body's truth beyond words. And I got to tell you, my sister, being 10 years old and the responsibilities she had, it's a lot. One of my greatest pleasures in life is just sitting and talking with my big sister. She doesn't know it, but I value it more than most things because there's always stories there. My sister's backyard looks the way people want their front yards to look. When I tell you that chick is clean, 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 she is a domesticate at home. When I tell you she can cook, I don't know anybody who makes a better pot of collard greens. Yeah, yeah. That becomes the outcome. That becomes the asset. That becomes a benefit ongoingly for me. Yeah. That I was a part of her journey, that we could be at this place together. Yeah. And I want to be clear when I talk about this idea of addiction. The craving that exists around addiction is a messenger, not a monster. We demonize everything we don't understand. That craving as a messenger, it tells us where the nervous system feels alone, unseen, or disconnected from regulation. Because what? The brain is always seeking survival. The brain is always seeking safety. Somatic healing invites curiosity and beneficial targets to work through the system, understanding the importance of getting into the reflexive core. And that's in the brainstem, y'all. And if it's not hitting the reflexive core, there's no way to have sustainable healing, restoration, unburdening. Okay? Because it's in this reflexive core, this is where addiction lives, and this is the same location required for sustainable change. Okay? So you may ask yourself, where in the body does craving live? Please recognize there is a need to process the material behind the cravings and urges. This becomes an opportunity for rewiring the brain to communicate to other parts that are connected to present time, consequences, frontal lobe activities, right? And what happens when we bring gentle awareness instead of shame? See, that takes us right into resonance. Part of my perspective around addiction It has everything to do with connection, relationship, belonging, all those things. And so when we can bring gentle awareness instead of shame, there's connection even in that. And what if healing is not control, but compassion for what the body had to do to survive? Reflective invitation here. What if the part of you that reaches for the substance is simply the part that's still trying to stay alive? What if? Yeah, because there are some people listening today that are in active addiction. And that's a fair question to ask. What if the part of you that reaches for the substance is simply the part that's still trying to stay alive? Whatever the substance is, because all addiction is not around drugs, y'all. And I want to say this because anytime I talk about dominant culture and the myth of control, be clear. In dominant culture, addiction often wears a different mask for dominant cultured people. I should say dominant cultured white people, right? And that different mask can look like achievement, overworking, perfectionism, and consumerism. When your nervous system has been trained by whiteness to equate worth with productivity, the high becomes success itself. And I'm going to tell you something I'm noticing too, even when it comes to marginalized women, especially BIPOC women. And I'm seeing this quite a bit in high performing women that identify as Black. This whole idea of achievement as identity. But when you start to peel back those layers, then what you recognize is no matter what level of achievement is attained, it still does not promote health and wellness and an authentic sense of self, right? And I think sometimes we have to slow down around what this society that we're all impacted by. Every person in America is impacted by whiteness, white supremacy. It is in our macro system. It is in our institutions. It's part of the fiber of our nation, y'all. I'm just saying. It's history. People are treated different depending on how they show up. Facts. Busyness is a socially acceptable addiction. And collapse, burnout, breakdown is the body's withdrawal. Notice that. Even when we come from a dominant cultured perspective, when we start talking about this idea of productivity and hidden addictions, right? Addiction in and of itself lives in systems because in dominant culture, it rewards overworking. It rewards perfectionism. It rewards busyness and consumption. These are the socially acceptable addictions, the ones that keep the body in fight or flight while calling in success. Just think about it. That applies to all of us. Because the fact of the matter is, especially for us degreed carrying, license carrying professionals, right? Yeah. Entrepreneurs. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We are all impacted by the empire. Yeah. Dominant, cultured, normative. That is academy diction right there. Normative. Yeah. Conversation for another day. But I want to just give this invitation. How does your nervous system confuse control with safety? Because when whiteness equates worth with production, addiction hides behind achievement. And when capitalism rewards exhaustion, rest becomes reclamation and rebellion. I'm just saying, where has achievement become your drug of choice? What would withdrawal from overwork look like in your body? Yeah. But I want to invite us today to look at recovery as regulation, resonance, and relationship. Because recovery is not just abstinence, it's reconnection. The antidote to addiction is not willpower, it's safety, y'all. What kind of spaces of safety are we creating with intentionality while receiving a deepened understanding of what that looks like and what that is? When people feel seen, soothed, safe, and supported, the body no longer needs to seek safety in substances. That's why relational healing, community, therapy, somatic modalities, and yes, my favorite, brain spotting, matters more than compliance. And I really love that aspect of brain spotting because as a practitioner, it's our role to stay in the tail of the comet. The client is seen as the head of the comet. And brain spotting is a client centered, client led modality because we trust people to heal themselves. Because we are so wedded to science, we recognize and understand how healing takes place. Yeah. And so, even as I say, when people feel seen, soothed, safe, and supported, the body no longer needs to seek safety in substances. And when I go there with this idea of community, therapy, brain spotting, okay, yeah, compliance can't be a part of that. Yeah, recovery happens in resonance. Healing happens, and I've been saying this, y'all, at the speed of safety. Recovery means learning how to co regulate again, how to be in the presence of another nervous system and feel safe enough to stay. It's moving from self punishment to self compassion, from control to curiosity, from silence to resonance. What does regulation look like for you? Who helps your nervous system exhale? What relationships, spaces, or rituals help your body remember safety? Addiction is not the enemy, it's information. It's your body saying, I've been alone too long. Addiction is the body's cry for safety. When we stop shaming the strategy, we can finally meet the need. And when we meet the need, healing becomes possible. And I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for my colleagues, sitting with people. I'm rooting for parents holding their children. Yeah, I'm rooting for communities who have been historically impacted by substance being flooded through their communities as a form of control. Yep, sure am. Clinicians, how can you see addiction as adaptation, a trauma response, and not defiance? Communities, how can we make safety more accessible than substances? I said it. Individuals, what does compassion look like for the parts of you that once needed to cope? And parents, how do you model regulation instead of avoidance to your children? Because be clear, the body isn't chasing the high, it's chasing home. And healing happens when the nervous system finally remembers. It doesn't have to run anymore. Thank you for being with me. This episode, it has been a little bit activating for me. Yeah, addiction doesn't just impact the individual who may be in active addiction. It impacts families. It impacts communities in more ways than one. Even as I sit here, I folded my arms because I will never, ever forget that call that my mom made from Charleston while I was at work. And my mom said to me, excuse me, go find my child. I'm like, Ma, I'm at work. Mama wasn't trying to hear none of that. And you know what? I'm grateful. My mom has fought for every one of her children. And what I'm finding as I am scribing my book and I am having these conversations with my mom, it just kind of blows me away the woman that my mom is. She's always had a protective sense to her. But when I was in my early 20s, and my mom called me like that, and she was using some language that I won't use when I was being resistant to go find my sister. And when she said, bleep, 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 don't make me come to Atlanta, I knew I would much rather lose my job that day than to tangle with our mom. And that's just real talk. And when my mom started to speak to me very sternly, there was no choice she gave me. In all fairness and honesty, my mom was teaching me in that moment. My mother was exemplifying what the ethos of family meant. And she threw it. She only had to throw it that one time, and you better believe I caught it. Yeah, 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 yeah. And so with that, thank you for being with me as I worked through this episode. And if I'm transparent, I would say to you, as I've been sitting here and speaking in this microphone, the images have been coming up of what that was to live through active addiction. But I got to tell you something. The images are there, but they don't hurt like they did, right? And listen, the joy on the other side of that, active addiction with my sister, being clean and sober, damn near 30 years, the rewards, the benefit, to see my sister and her reclamation of her life was so worth whatever that journey was, that I would do it again and again and again. When I look at just the beauty of my sister and what she demonstrates, even right now in my life, when things get heavy for me, even now, I go to my sister's house, literally. Yep. When I need to throw myself down, have a tantrum, need support, and my sister knows how to always put something good on that stove, and I throw it on a damn plate, and it just feels healing for me. So, shout out to my big sister. I absolutely love you. Yep, yep. And I am so grateful for Mama. Vernell Gantlin, I love you. God could not have given me a better mom. And I so appreciate the contributions that you continue to make in my life. Yep, that's my old girl, y'all, Vernell Gantlin. That's my mama. Yep, I ain't never experienced nothing like her. Yep, and her countenance and her commitment to family and the way she protected us and all the things. Yep. All right. Thank you for being with me for this episode of Beyond the Spot. And until we meet again, and if anything I said or anything you felt resonates with you, please share the podcast on your networks, with your friends, with your families. And if there's absolutely anything I can do to support you, let me know. Until we meet again, this has been Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, and it is my pleasure to serve you. If today's episode resonated with your nervous system or your spirit, share it with someone who's still unlearning, and reach out to me. My website is gracecommunitycounseling.com. You can reach me on Instagram at Monroy LPC. That is MONROY LPC. Also, I have offerings from retreats to brainspotting trainings to workshops, you name it. And I am also a speaker. So if you ever need a speaker with my skill set, look me up. Give me a call. Let's see what can happen. And absolutely for you clinicians and adjacent body healers, feel free to reach out and attend a brain spotting training. We have trainings all the time. Thank you.